Hi, welcome to the History Hounds tour of the Grant Creek Schoolhouse. In a moment, we will be exploring the inside of the Grant Creek School as well as checking out some cool historic photographs and information. Thanks for joining us. Grant Creek, or Grant Crick, was named for Richard Grant, who brought his family to Hellgate in 1858 and settled along the creek that now bears his name. Richard's daughter, Julia, later married Christopher P. Higgins, one of the founders of both Hellgate and Missoula. Another interesting historical connection is that his son, Johnny Grant, established the Grant Ranch, which later became the Grant Corps' historical site. In 1870, another settler, John Rankin, constructed a ranch and sawmill along the Grant Creek. This sawmill eventually provided the lumber for building Fort Missoula, as well as for the first Grant Creek schoolhouse. The Rankin family had a long history with the Grant Creek School. 3 of Rankin's children, Mary, Edna, and Grace, attended the school. Harriet later taught at the school. It is said that Jeanette Rankin may have served here as a substitute teacher. Jeanette later became the first woman elected to the U.S. Congress. The Grant Creek School District was abandoned in 1947. Nearly 30 years later, its owners, Reed and Kathy Marbut, donated the schoolhouse to the museum. Through the efforts of the Eta chapter of the Delta Kappa Gamma teaching sorority, the school was reconstructed and furnished to resemble a one-room schoolhouse.
Okay, welcome back to another History Hounds Explore the Fort. I'm here with Reykur and Sif today. We're going to be exploring the Grant Creek Schoolhouse. Grant Creek School was built in 1907, and it was a school until 1937. When we go inside, I will show you more of the artifacts that we have in there and talk to you a little bit about what school was like more than 100 years ago. Welcome to the inside of the Grant Creek Schoolhouse. I'm here inside with my buddies Sif and Reykur, which is kind of perfect because if you were a student at the one-room schoolhouse, you would have all grades squished into one room. So if you were Sif's size, you might end up in one of those benches over there. And if you were a bigger kid like Reykur, you might be sitting in one of these desks. And one of the ways the teachers made that work is they would have the older kids help the littler kids with their work. Alright, so what Sif is looking at here is a map of geographical terms. In our classrooms today, you might look at a video or a computer to see how the world is made up in places that are different from your home. But the teacher who was in this classroom would have used a map like this one to explain things like harbors and the sea and a volcano. Probably the kids who went to Grant Creek School were pretty familiar with mountains, since we have mountains around here.
If you visited the schoolhouse before, you may have noticed this piano. What you might not know is that although it didn't start out at this school, it was in the Jens Schoolhouse near Drummond. So how did it get here? Well, Kim Brigham, our local journalist and history aficionado, filled me in. Kim's father, Martin Brigham, had been a student at the Jens School, and when the school was set to be torn down to make room for I-90, Martin was able to rescue some items. Probably at the insistence of Kim's mother, Dale Brigham, the piano came with them to their new home just east of Missoula, where the piano settled in on the porch near the fireplace. Dale used the piano to teach private kindergarten, and Kim and his 4 siblings had fun plunking along on the keys. Later, Dale began teaching at Bonner School, and their new neighbor, Gwen Thibodeau, found a home for the piano at Franklin School, where she taught. Sometime later, it made its way to our school at Fort Missoula. As you may have guessed, music was one of the subjects that the teachers would have been expected to teach to the students here, and having a piano like this one would have been a great resource. But speaking of things that have been rescued from buildings and schoolhouses in particular, we're going to wander along this wall here and check out some of the cool artifacts that we found when the building was donated to us. So the first thing we have here is a little bit of woodwork here. We have a pig-shaped cutting board, as maybe some of you guys remember making things like that in your own shop classes. And then the next thing down the wall here is we have some marine animals that were made out of different pieces of scrap material. And as we wander down the side of the wall here, we can see an American flag and then also some Valentines that these are photocopies of the ones that we found in the building. So they would have come from that last class in 1937. Past the teacher's desk here and onto our chalkboard, you'll see behind a bit of plexiglass there we've got some signatures of people who had been students here that signed the wall when we had our dedication. Now, my favorite mean old school marm, Angie Palin, would not approve if I didn't talk at least a little bit about rules and punishment. But you'll have to come out to the fort sometime when we're open again so that Angie can tell you all about it and maybe give you a demonstration. One thing that was a bit different about school in the Grant Creek Schoolhouse is there was something called Corporal Punishment. So Angie is fond of telling the kiddos if they had been misbehaving, they might be asked to go get a switch. And if you don't know what that means, go ask your parents. Teachers didn't exactly have it easy either, and there were a lot of rules that they had to follow. If Erin here, who was one of our living history interns, was actually a teacher back in 1907, she would have to come to school early to make sure that that stove was fired up to get the room warm for class. She also would probably have to stay at one of the students' houses as we didn't have a teacherage with our schoolhouse. And finally, there were rules about her behavior, such as if she was to get married, she couldn't keep her job. And if she was seen with men who weren't her family members, she'd get in trouble for that too. There was even a rule about loitering in ice cream parlors, so no ice cream for Erin. Thanks again for joining us on this tour of the Grant Creek School. I hope you had as much fun as Reykur, Sif, and I. Next week is Missoula Gives, and I hope that you consider supporting us and helping us save the train by giving a little for history. Thanks.